the Sync Selling Program? How would you look to kind of summarize that for someone to say, what's it actually like?
I think it's thoughtful and trustworthy, and that's really rare in sales training. In the past, I have signed up to several of them, and in the end, I've had to fight really hard to get refunds out. There'll be like 11 or so decision makers. It means that lots of people need to be involved in the decision. I just haven't got the headspace to create all of that myself. You get so many more yeses within the calls. That's why it's really sped up both our conversion rate and also the speed of the sales cycle. The return on investment on a salesperson and their impact in revenue generation for the business is going to be way, way better.
Maddy, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for putting some time aside to speak about your experience with the Sync Selling Program.
You're very welcome.
I'm really looking forward to hearing about the journey for Flourish, your company, and where you started as to where you've got to now and all the exciting things that are happening. Would you be able to just give us a brief introduction to yourself, what Flourish does, the company, and a brief overview for people listening?
Of course. So I'm Maddy Cooper. I've been building and running marketing agencies for about 20-something years. And I founded Flourish just over 2 years ago because I wanted to help brands to develop an AI solution whereby they could run their marketing operations and also navigate legal compliance, because it's a really broken, messy system at the moment. So that's the problem that we solve. It's an agentic solution to help brands make bold, brilliant, compliant marketing consistently across global to local markets and enable legal teams to say yes rather than you can't say that. And it's the engine to sort that.
Perfect. And you deal with like your target list or types of deals that you're doing are pretty big prospects, aren't they? It's the sizable organizations that you're targeting.
Yes, absolutely. So they are the kind of enterprise level and complexity, big businesses. And that means that often there'll be like 11 or so decision makers. I think that can be an average in enterprise decision making. And because the problem that we solve inherently means that lots of people need to be involved in the decision. So within businesses, they're so horribly siloed. You've got like market insights and sustainability and product development and marketing and legal, all in their silos, kind of trying to make their work flow between email and Teams and all the rest of it. And that is a mess. Now, Flourish solves that mess, but it does mean that you need lots of people to be involved in the decision to go from the old muddly way to the future with Flourish. So it makes the sale really complicated.
Okay. And that brings it to the next question then. So what piqued your curiosity and got you to the point where you started to think that help around sales and the sales process might be something that's good to explore? Because the sales process, like when you talk about a sales process, it's not the sexiest thing to talk about. And often people will experience the symptoms, but they won't know that the root cause is actually we need a sales process. Walk me through how you came to the point where you saw our ad advertising to help founders with complex sales and thought, actually, that might be worth exploring.
So I've been a salesperson predominantly in various kind of commercial roles within marketing agencies that I've either worked for or that I've led. So I've got plenty of sales experience. But the things that are new for me, and therefore the reason why I saw your ad and it's definitely resonated, is that Flourish is an AI platform. So it's a new solution, and it's selling a software with the service that goes with it is so different to just selling consultancy. So there's a sophistication and an art to demoing and running that kind of a sales process that's new, and I wanted the best in class thinking on how to go about that challenge. And secondly, although I've had loads of sales training in the past, the difference is that that was all pre-AI. So all of that documentation that I had and all of the logic and the thinking, I didn't have wrapped up in a really good, clear, Flourish specific AI system. So the idea that that would just be solved for me and that we would work together for you to propose your expertise as to what the best way we should do things, and then for you to just take all that work off my shoulders and turn it into a playbook within Notion, all of the guides, all of the how to do everything, all of the prompts, so that I could just run everything super efficiently in an AI supercharged context. I just haven't got the headspace to create all of that myself. So the fact that you just did it all for us, customized, was awesome.
Great stuff. And what was because obviously when you first assessing and when you click on an ad from Instagram or Facebook and you get onto the sales call, obviously you're always trying to work out, is this the right partner for me? Are they going to do what they say they're going to do? Are they going to fulfill? Walk me through some of the concerns or suspicions that you perhaps had when you came into the sales process for us, and then how you found we were able to alleviate those or get you to the point where you felt actually we are the right partner to work with on the project.
So I get targeted with a lot of different adverts for things to do with sales and marketing methodology. And in the past, I have signed up to several of them. And in the end, I've had to fight really hard to get refunds out of them, because for all of the formulae and supposedly the brilliance of lots of those other solutions that are offered, I think there's a lot of hype, and a lot of them are quite blunt because they're more like lead generation specialists trying to sell the art of lead generation. And it's just not refined enough or bespoke enough for what we needed for Flourish in our more complex scenario. So there's a lot of people making a lot of money by advertising those solutions, but I just didn't trust them. It just felt so formulaic and so en masse, whereas your process was so like I could really trust in you and trust in your team and the structure of what you offered. And it was really tailored to what I need and didn't need. And you were really responsive to that. There were some elements that just were kind of out of the realms of what we required or I had learned before, and you customized everything. And then the group sessions were great because, of course, then you could learn from each other as well as having that tailored kit.
Perfect. And because your buyers, we mentioned like a blunt approach there, your buyers, Flourish can't be a salesy engagement, can you, for your prospects? Because they would run a mile if they sensed that you were being salesy or trying to be manipulative in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are all that sort of snake oily sales dynamic. It just was so wrong with Flourish. If you're trying to sell to a chief marketing officer, a chief legal officer of one of the world's biggest brands, that kind of vibe is not appropriate at all. It needs to be more sophisticated, but also appropriately persuasive and playing all the right psychology and taking them on the sales journey. And I learned masses. I mean, in the past, I've paid a lot of money for me and whole teams to have sales training. I think what you provided was incredibly powerful and very good value given the impact of it. And the caliber of what we learned and received, because it's a really strong kit that now I can grow out a whole sales team using that kit.
Perfect. And you mentioned the impact there. What would you say are some of the key things that the programmers helped with? I know you've got long sales cycles, so you can't always get like super quick wins, and the feedback loop is quite long. How did you know what we were doing was working, and what is some of the impact or the benefits that you've seen from being able to implement the sales process that we put together?
I think it's the best in class methodology that has been that you have provided, but you have tailored it for our context. You and your team have provided that within a really strong Notion structure, so everything is there. And because it's there, it's repeatable, and that's efficient and powerful because you just run the same processes over and over again, but that gives confidence and conviction. And with that confidence and conviction, of course, you can sell more powerfully, because people just feel that energy of having greater belief and greater confidence in exactly what you're doing and how you're holding them through the sales process.
Yeah. And how has it changed? 'Cause I know one of the things that we've focused on a lot with Flourish in particular is the process across demos and also stakeholder engagement. How have you found the working in the kind of the deal workshop, and what have you noticed in how you conduct demos and engage stakeholders as a contrast to what you were doing before?
So I think before we were either kind of having in one conversation a bit of a discovery and then doing the demo, but it wasn't tailored enough. I think that's a very standard way of doing it's kind of these sorts of sales, but it isn't, certainly it's not optimal. What we're now doing differently is holding the really clear discovery, very carefully playing that back and using our prompts to turn that into a discovery script, and then holding the discovery, but with all of those very effective psychological lock-ins where you're asking them like, and would that solve your problem? But doing that in a elegant, trust-gaining kind of way. But that method just does take the client on that journey of there's our problem, here's the solution. Will that solve your problem and make things better and different? Yes, it will. You get so many more yeses within the calls than I think before. If it was just going through the demo, they could see that it was intelligent and interesting. They weren't quite really emotionally processing why it was so powerful for them and why they therefore really wanted it and wanted it now. So that's why it's really sped up both our conversion rate and also the speed of the sales cycle.
Great stuff. And walk me through some of the wins for Flourish as an organization over the last 6 months. It's been a really kind of like swift moving and fast evolving product and journey for you. It's been a very busy 6 months, hasn't it?
It definitely has. So the original genesis of Flourish is that we were focusing on sustainable marketing. We've really obsessively listened to the market and what people really needed, and so we've pivoted to just to expand the offering to marketing compliance at large. So, but what we have done is stayed really focused on specific audience types of heavily regulated industries. So we've won some in medical technology, some more in pharmaceutical. There's some that are more in a kind of top of pipeline now that are landing in gambling and then in FMCG, because they're all companies that make lots of claims. They have really complicated regulations, and they have the complexity of how they hold their brand at a global center and then how it's represented at each of the markets. So I think working with you has helped us to navigate our story as we shifted from sustainability to marketing compliance and marketing operations more broadly, and still holding to what our ICP needed to be. And it is just those global, heavily regulated companies.
Yeah. And the founder, obviously you, in the first instances, are doing all the sales and everything else yourself. How do you feel now that you've got effectively like a process in place? And how's that changed how you feel about bringing people into the organization to do aspects of the sales or the business development or the demo or the product demonstrations?
So I think in the early days, it was right that I did the sales because I mean, it can be classic to do founder-led selling in the beginning. I think it was fine that I did it because I had the sales background. Now I feel I can bring in salespeople because I've got the toolkit to know that they're going to do everything to a strong standard. And it's going to be so much easier for me to bring that person or people on board than if I just had to say, oh, like, here's how I do it, shadow me for a bit, then crack on. The odds of their success would have been really questionable. Now I can give to them a fully produced, tailored toolkit coupled with the videos and the transcripts and the every way that we've done everything. And we've got that engine all the way through from the discovery to the proposal. That kit, I've never in the past been able to give a salesperson that caliber of toolkit. So it's the return on investment on a salesperson and their impact in revenue generation for the business is going to be way, way better.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I speak to so many founders, and the thing that people forget is when you're doing founder-led sales, you're most effective as a salesperson as the founder, because one, you sell with a level of conviction and passion about your product, which other people or salespeople or employees just don't have access to be able to get. And the other is you're selling on a wealth of knowledge and experience, so you naturally hold an authority frame with your prospect. When you delegate that to someone else with the best will in the world, even with a relatively high caliber talent, you don't have that. So you have to look at other levers that you can pull to do that. And I think that's one thing that we look at across the sync selling is we've tried to make sure that in the absence of the founder being on every call and writing every follow-up, how can we make the founder's job easier when they are doing founder-led sales and make it easier for them to do the follow-ups and keep control of the prospect and get deals in quicker, but then also giving the salespeople that come into the organization the tools that they need to be able to replicate the job of a founder, but without that experience and expertise.
Yeah.
Okay, and what would you say to, because one of the things that people always think, I know they always think this before they come into the program, is my customer is different, my sales cycle is particularly complex, or my buyers won't respond to salesy tactics. What would you say to someone watching this who's thinking, my customer's different? How can someone get and understand the years of experience that I have and apply it in some kind of cookie cutter approach?
I think obviously marketing and sales needs to be persona led and it needs to be tailored to the context of who you're selling to. And most likely from a marketing perspective, that's how you'll gain their attention, is that your target audience can kind of feel that you are a mirror of what their problem is. But from a sales perspective, the psychology is so similar across sectors and across contexts. And that was very evident within the group sessions. We were solving the same problems. You could hear different incarnations of, angles on the same issues, but they were the same issues. And I think I'd invite anyone who's kind of querying this to think of when you're buying as an individual, whether it's clothes or a car or a holiday or a house or whatever, actually the same kind of tactics, the same, whether it's scarcity dynamics or whatever, all of these different things, we respond psychologically in very similar ways, whatever the context is. So that's why the program makes sense in a multi-sector, all angles dynamic, because we're all humans and we're triggered to buy for various reasons. We just, as salespeople, need to tune into those to have the best effect.
And what would you generally, if you had to kind of sum up your experience of working with me and within like the sync selling program, how would you look to kind of summarize that for someone to say, what's it actually like?
I think it's thoughtful and trustworthy. And that's really rare in sales training. Sales training often is theoretical and hard to apply in practice. And that's expensive and can actually slow you down before it speeds you up, which is the last thing that any sales team normally needs ever, but definitely at the point when you've reached out to wanting sales training, you do not want to be slowed down before you speed up. Your method was thoughtful, intelligent, absolutely trustworthy, unlike the typical snake oil. And because of the practical application and the sophistication of your use of AI and with these toolkits, it just speeds you up from the off.
Perfect. Okay. And lastly, I guess, what would you say to someone who's considering it and maybe on the fence, thinks that they probably are leaving a bit on the table in terms of sales, but isn't sure whether it's going to be right for them? What would you say to someone just considering whether to take the plunge or not?
Having run businesses for the last 20 years, it doesn't matter how amazingly efficient you are with internal operations, you can never get to your ultimate state unless you have the most powerful sales engine. So under-investing in sales is futile. The work in investing in this caliber of knowledge and then the method is just a brilliant return, and it's really long lasting as well. I think it was extraordinarily good value for the immediate benefit and the longevity of what we've got out of it as a system from here on, for me and for then this broader team that I'll bring in.
If we were to say, is there anything else that we haven't spoken about which you think is worth mentioning?
Not really, just do
No.
it. Just do it. I think that the key thing I tune into is that number of equivalents of this that have caught my eye, whether it was via like Instagram targeting or LinkedIn targeting. And then I've had to invest time and money and then really fight hard for a refund because it just didn't hit the mark. Your version hit the mark because you worked with me in a really trusted, consultative way. You didn't give me your formula. You listened really carefully to what I needed, and then you created the kit that was formulaic for me to uphold ongoing.
Perfect. Great stuff.